Hello to the folks who are joining us. Let's give it just a couple more minutes here and let a few more people hop onto the webinar and we'll get started. Alrighty, folks, thank you for joining our monthly customer webinar for Evolve electrical users. This session is for our Evolve users to get a chance to work directly with the customer success and product teams. We demonstrate features, go over some common questions that we hear, and we do take your questions live. So please, throughout the webinar, submit your questions using the Q&A function. If we don't have time to get to your questions, we'll make sure to follow up after the webinar through email. This webinar is being recorded and we will forward the recording to all registrants. You can also find all of our webinar recordings and more feature demos and walkthroughs on the Evolve YouTube channel. So let's get started off with just a few housekeeping announcements today. Firstly, I want to invite everybody on the call to Evolve University. Evolve University is a learning platform that gives your team access to hundreds of hours of Evolve training videos. While we do have lots of stuff available on our YouTube and we hold these monthly seminars for you to come and get direct answers to your questions, we wanted to provide you guys with even more learning opportunities. So I'm going to, in just a minute here, drop an email into the chat, and you guys can reach out to our customer success specialist, Alex, if you're interested in learning more about Evolve University. And here's a look at the amazing team that we've got on the call today, your dedicated Evolve product and customer success team members. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Jason Earl to kick things off. Jason, what do you got for us today?
Thanks, Marina. So today I have a little tip or just kind of want to share some visibility about one of our features, one of my favorite features, and that is Smart Bend Multi-Trim. So I've got a model here that we'll walk through the different uses and some of the use cases of it, and we'll kind of talk about the power of this tool. So the idea behind Smart Bend Multi-Trim is that you can just have two pieces of conduit sitting in free space, and you can connect them together with an offset or a kick. So the bend families are great, but they take a little bit of learning and getting used to manipulate them the way that you would want them. So this offers a quicker and easier way of getting those offsets and kicks into your model. So let's walk through and see a couple of examples here. So to start using Smart Bend Multi-Trim, there's actually two functions, and we'll look at both of them today. The first one is placing in a Smart Bend where I've got a gap between two conduits. So I may have an offset here. I could have a rolling offset. These could be at different elevations, or I could have a kick. The other function that it has is the shift function. So many of our features have shift functions. You'll know because it's got an asterisk on the icon. And so when you hold shift, it will do something different. In the case of Smart Bend Multi-Trim, what that's going to do is allow you to replace a native Revit offset or kick with a Evolve Smart Bend. So if you've got somebody on your team, or if you just prefer to draw conduit the old-fashioned way, you can still do that and very quickly convert those into Smart Bends. So let's look at a couple examples now. To get started, I'm going to click on the button, and then I'm going to select my first run that I want to extend. So I'll select this one here. And in reality, it doesn't really matter which one you pick first. So I'll hit finish, and then I'll select the one that I want to connect to and hit finish. And after a couple seconds of processing here, I now have a kick in my project. And if we look at the properties here, we can actually see that this one is rolling offset. So it will handle any rolling offsets. just fine. Next up, let's look at a kick. And I actually have a 3D view of this one that we can look at. So on this one, I have a conduit coming out of this box, and I need to connect it to the conduit coming from this trapeze. So let's run our SmartBend multi-trim and see if we get a kick. So I'll run that, and so I'll just pick one end, hit finish, and now I'll pick the other end and hit finish. After a couple seconds there, we now have a kick in our project, and once we're ready, we can go ahead and optimize that for prefabrication. All right, so I have a couple other examples here set up, and these are going to be for the shift function. So if we take a look at this one, we've got a kick drawn in here with native Revit parts. Really, this is an Evolve family. However, it's drawn in the way that you would without the Evolve bends. So in this case, I'm going to use the shift function of SmartBend multi-trim. So I'm going to hold shift, and while I'm holding shift, I will click on the button, and now I can release shift. At this point, I just need to select my bends. The first one that we'll select will be the stationary end of the SmartBend. So whichever one you want to be the stationary end, as in it can't move, then select that one first, and then you'll just select the other bend. Once you've selected both bends, it'll think for a couple seconds, and then you'll have a kick here all ready to go for prefab. Just need to optimize it. All right, and then I have another case set up here for an offset. So I'll do the same thing. I'm going to hold shift and click on SmartBend multi-trim. And then I'll select one of the bends. And now I will select my other bend. And now it has been replaced with a SmartBend. There's a lot of creative ways that you can run your conduit to utilize this one, as opposed to kind of the method of slicing and couplings. So, kind of show some of your creativity, kind of work on those conduit runs, and I think you'll find a smoother and quicker way to run your conduits when you've got kicks and offsets. All right, so that's all I've got for SmartBend multi-trim. I'm going to go ahead and throw it over to Adam now.
Great, thanks, Jason. All right, there's a few things that I wanted to go over today. Let me share my screen here. First thing being, we are holding a weekly office hours. I'm going to go ahead and throw this in the chat. You can sign up. Basically, every Tuesday at 2 Eastern, we host usually like a topical training session, and then we'll do Q&A on either the topic or any basically general Q&A. So that's a resource that you can access. It's a good time to get in, unique questions or things like that and interact with us in the support and training side. So go ahead and take a look at that. And I probably cover the upcoming update for 7.2. First, I just wanted to go over a change on the downloads page, which I think I covered last week, but two things to note: that all the previous installers, the different release versions, are posted now to this Evolve download archive site, which you can get to from the downloads page. This will be all the production release versions, hot fixes, along with their corresponding release notes. So if you have to go to a previous Revit year that's no longer supported, you could certainly get those, as well as this will go back to 5.4 and the 4.4 2019 installers. Now keep in mind, these 2019 and now 2020 are no longer supported, so those versionings stop at some point and do not continue on. The other thing on the downloads page we've added is a upgrade instructions link. This will take you to any important information you need to know when upgrading to a new Evolve version. So mechanical, electrical may have similar or unique things depending on the features, but basically this will tell you if certain configurations may get reset on you, if you have to do a certain thing prior to upgrading, or if any features are going to stop working that we may have changed, anything that's related that will impact your current process. We're going to try to, or we will identify that in this section. This information is always found in the release notes as well. Um, However, if you scroll down to the bottom, we'll have upgrade notice. It's the same information that you find here. Now with future release notes, I'll put this right up at the top just so that it's front and center. Again, just trying to make sure this information is front and center when going through updates. All right, so what I want to cover for the time is the 7.2 update. So this should be out shortly. We are wrapping up the final QA of it now. So the focus of this release was to remove the Foresight integration and separate that so that we can, again, put that out as a separate installer and enhance it independently from the main product. But we also threw in a handful of new features and, of course, bug fixes and improvements and enhancements throughout. So I'll go through a couple of these that are notable, and we'll take a look at what they are. So I guess kind of on the same topic with what Jason covered on the multi-trim. So in 7.0, that is a shift function. We did put this as two separate buttons so that they're more front and center. I know the shift function was kind of hidden. So there'll be two separate buttons. You can hotkey these independently. Now, with that, we also made an enhancement. So with buttons that have the asterisks, which mean they have the shift function, you can also now hotkey that as well. And the process is just holding the shift key, I'm sorry, the spacebar key, and then using the hotkey to run the command. So basically space and then your hotkey command, and that'll run the shift function of the feature. So kind of confusing to explain, but hopefully that makes sense. Anyway, so no change with the functionality of these tools, just broken out as the two buttons. We did add two new additional optimized tools. One being move a selected end a certain distance, and the other being consume and center. So what that would look like, let me just draw something here real quick. Close out some of these. So we'll do consume and center. So let me just drag this out. Consume and center will basically take any bend and one or more, if I just have this one here, and it will center the bend within the pipe. So you'll have, an equal amount of nose and tail length within the bend. So this will be done with kicks, offsets, what have you. So this was a common request. Oftentimes, whether it's just for optimizing a run that's turning a corner, or even for fabricating, if you're requiring the field to cut in a bend, having that bend in the center gives it the most flexibility if it needs to be adjusted in the field. So it's kind of a quick tool to do that. So along with that, the move selected end allows you to select the bend and then select which side you want to move and enter a value. So if I want to reduce that by 18 inches, I could say minus 18 inches, and the end will move in. Likewise, I could extend it out, this fixed value. So this will can be done in a group bulk edit as well. It doesn't have to be a single bend. So yeah, just two new bend optimization tools. Another quick tool, not just for conduit, I guess, is a multi-run select. So what this tool does when you enable it is you can select one or more single conduits or anything that's a system, right? Conduit or cable tray, duct pipe. And then when you hit finish, it will select everything that's connected within that run. So the equivalent of a, tab select function with just a quick tool. The last new feature that will be coming out is the part encoder. So this will, I'll back up to kind of give some context to what this is. With the Evolve family hangers, as well as the Ben families, duck spacers, we have a behind the scenes function that identifies uniqueness based on certain attributes. Where you see this with hangers is if you use our compare data utility to kind of snoop the family, you'll see there's an evolve configuration ID parameter. This is a hidden parameter, and it has a, I think it's 12 character number alphanumeric string. This code here is being generated by Evolve. So you'll see this for probably the last year or so. Within Evolve, we've been doing this behind the scenes. You would take note of this within a schedule, for example. If I look at my default Evolve schedule, these are going to be filtered or grouped by configuration ID. So that's how we get this grouping so that I can identify I have 4 of these type of hangers, 15 of these type, etc. So this configuration ID is, as far as up to 7.0, is hard coded to look at the family. So what it's looking at is things like the strut type, what size is it, what length is it, the rod lengths, the rod size, all the various parameters within this family that make it a unique assembly. So what we did is we've created a generic utility that can do this and that you can customize to do this yourself. So that's what this part encoder is. What you'll see is, actually, let me delete this. When you have 7.2 and you start a project for the first time or open a project for the first time with 7.2, you will get, let me just load these in real quick. You won't have to do this, but I'm just sneaking them in here. Here we are. All right. Oop. Let me just make sure that came in. Sorry. What you'll get is a couple of rules set up here. This is the data profile and hard code. That's what I missed. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So what you'll get now with this tool is you'll have 2 generic rules that come in automatically. These are replacing the behind the scene rule that's been running up until this release. This now, having this open, is going to allow you to customize this rule and certainly make additional rules or utilize this in other ways. But the way the tool works is it's all driven off a data profile. If you're not familiar with the data profile, this is our utility for creating a container of elements based on an element filter. And the user can define what type of parameters they want to look at. So the way the part encoder works with this is the profile is going to tell us what family you want to apply this to. So this is going to be applied to our trapeze families. And what parameters do you want to evaluate to create this unique hash code, the alphanumeric string? So every parameter that's listed here is being evaluated. Now, there's 2 different profiles, one hardware, one no hardware. This is not the way 7.0 is set up. So this is different, but it's specifically built 2 different ways to show how this can be used. So the no hardware profile does not evaluate the top attachment of the rod, where this hardware version does. You'll see I have this beam clamp rod coupling option. So what that means is if I'm using a hardware version family and I start adding attachments, that's going to make the configuration ID change. If I'm using a non-hardware version of the family, modifying the attachments would not have any impact on the ID. So hopefully that makes sense. But basically, think of it as a tool that can allow you to define uniqueness um, for parametric families. Uh, you know, you can do it other ways through various shared parameters and schedules, but this kind of creates a really good method for items that usually have like length variables. So for example, the trapeze with strut and rod lengths. All right. Um, so I'll look through to see if there's any other enhancements worth noting, but another thing that we layered in here on the same topic of, as I mentioned with the part encoder, we'll load in a couple of generic rules automatically. If you modify these rules or delete them, it's fine. You can do that. They obviously will stop working as intended. But we will not keep loading these in every time. This is a one-time load. Likewise, we also will load in various project level configurations like hanger profiles or sleeve settings. These rules that you see here are going to be coming in automatically if you do not have rules already established. The intent of this is for certainly for uh, new users of Evolve. Um, this will give you a way to have default configurations established that typically will work out of the box, depending if there's other settings that need to be applied. But it allows you to use these tools right out of the box. Obviously, they won't be exactly what you need in every situation, but it gives you a starting point so you can continue to refine it and make new rules. So the project level settings, you can think of it as if you uh, want a good way of knowing what your project and user settings are within your workstation's uh, menu here, you have this option to export configurations. This is a good way to just take everything that's within the current project and the current user and to just export all the configs out. So I'll go ahead and just throw this into a folder and we'll just take a look at it real quick just to show what that looks like. And basically you'll see a folder will get created, what's timestamped, and inside that will be all your project configs and user configs. So, so the project configs will be coming in, like I mentioned. Now, two other things worth mentioning: the utility configs that are not included at the basically, if the feature is included in this configuration exchange, it's handled differently. So let's collapse this. We'll see we have colorizer, data profiles, the data tables, parameter sync, the new part encoder, and reports. These types of profiles are all interconnect, or these types of configurations are kind of all our utility configs that are essentially somewhat connected. Some of them are, some of them aren't. Um, these are handled a little differently. So a change that you will see in 7.2 is when you open parameter sync, for example, you're going to see a lot less system rules. You'll see these are all usually our sample rules that are in there. A lot of these that say evolve description, these used to be system rules as well. So we basically removed the lock on the part description parameters and we've opened these up. So when you start a new project for the first time, these will not be in there like they were previously. So if I start a new project from here, I'll just select a generic template because you don't need to start with our template. So what you'll see with a new project are just the 3 core sync rules. Now, the way to bring in these utility configurations, again, is through the configuration exchange. So what you can do now, and this can be done for new projects, existing projects, when you go to the configuration exchange and you go to import, navigate to the C drive program files install folder, and then inside the resources folder, there is an EV batch file. This batch file is going to contain a series of default generic configurations for or sync rules or all the different things, utilities that we have. There's some example already created for all of those. So again, for if you want to just explore the new update, starting a new project, taking an existing model, grab all of these, import them, and now within your project file, you will have all the various sync rules, data tables, and so on. Something to note is these are not going to be set to automatic or anything. So by bringing these in, it's not going to impact the model by running automatic rules or anything like that. You will have to look at them and set them the way you want to use them. Again, these are intended to be starting points. The part description parameters, all of these here, which we have it kind of grouped. Whoops. Whoops. Let me just group these here. All of these sync rules that are within the part description, these are all very specific to the Evolve content that comes into the family browser. The reason these were opened up and not continued as system rules is one, you wouldn't have been able to turn them off. So if you did not want to use this sync rule, you couldn't turn it off. It had to run. So if the family you were using again was updating and you didn't want to, there was just no way to control it. The other thing would be if you wanted to make a modification, obviously you couldn't do that as well. So the intent behind these is so that, again, we're showing how you can use parameter sync to generate custom part descriptions. Typically, these are heavily parametric families with a lot of variables. So that's why we broke it out. The other thing that's worth noting, you'll see what my screen here, obviously I grouped and modified my grid state, but we did update the default grid states that we ship with. So for new users, it's going to look like this for the first time. You won't have to do anything, but there is a default grid state here that you could use. The best way to clear out your grid states, and if you want to reset yours and get the Evolve default ones, is you can navigate to the app data roaming Evolve folder, and then just delete the user grid states file. Delete this out, restart Revit, and it'll change to the new default ones. The grid states are very minor. I mean, it's just organizing the columns in something that would make sense. You know, where your enable column is. We put some conditional formatting in here, so the rules that are enabled are green. They're not, they're red. You could do this all yourself out of the box, taking advantage of our grid states and the conditional formatting. It's all built in, but again, we're just trying to layer all these tools in to give everybody the most out of the default configurations. The last thing that's on say kind of same as a user setting are the default selection filters. So element filter being the top utility that you should take advantage of and learn how to use. Within the update, we will ship with a series of default element filters. If you've already have them defined, they won't come in. But again, if you want to reset yours, You could delete your selection filter config, and that'll reset it. This is found within the install files as well. So let me just switch this back to this resource folder, and your selection um, filters are right there. So there's ways of getting these into existing projects. We don't just blow away any of your existing configs. That's not going to happen. But for new projects, new users, you'll get to see this right out of the gate. The element filters that are included, you'll notice there are electrical and mechanical filters. We just threw all of them into one config. If you're not a mechanical user, then ignore the filters or delete them. Likewise with electrical. There's also two other groupings. The Revit grouping are very generic Revit element filters that you could use every day to day. Hide and show linked models, scope boxes, section views, selecting dimensions. This one's a good one to select tags that have null values. A lot of good filters in here to look at. The last grouping here is a core grouping, meaning whether you're electrical or mechanical, these filters work with the evolve features. So this is going to be things like selecting points or things like that. So evolve related things that both electrical and mechanical users can take advantage of. All right. So let's just look through the release notes here. A couple of notable things. I won't really demo them, but I'll just point them out. Is within add and remove unions, there's an align union option. So you can turn this off now so it doesn't align the couplings. It basically just sets all the straight lengths to your value. So that's in there. Within the cable schedule, whoops, within the cable schedule here, there's a refresh cable function. So if you end up modifying your device information, your device ID, for example, you could refresh your cables. I mentioned the space key that works as a shift function. Also, the align bends. This tool now works with kick 90s as well. So it sets all the kick 90s at the same angle. Previously, it was just offsets and saddles. And looks like there's a handful of miscellaneous bug fixes. Um, the 7.0 bug where I know a bunch of people have gotten this, where you're spooling and you'll get an object set not to reference error. That bug has been corrected. That error, if you're getting it, I think I've covered this on somewhere at least once already, but for the sake of covering it again, basically you may get an error when with 7.0 when you're generating a sheet, and the error will say object not set to reference, something like that. What the fix is temporarily is it has to do with your default 3D view. So here's a good example where my 3D view is cropped. So all I'm seeing is this one element. If I were to spool something with the 7.0 version, I would get the error. So what you want to do is make sure you reset your 3D view and not have anything cropped out or hidden. That includes visibility graphics and your work sets if it's a workshare model. So that's how you clear out the error. Those who submitted tickets on that, you should have all gotten responded back and walked through that process, but that's been corrected. And I think that should cover all the enhancements. Again, I mean, there's quite a few fixes and enhancements throughout, very minor stuff that probably is not worth going over in too much detail. So I think we will leave it there, and I'll open it up to any questions. And we can spend the time answering any questions.
Great. Thanks so much, Adam. And we'll give it a couple minutes here to let you guys submit any remaining questions you may have for this month's session. And while we're waiting on you guys to submit your info, I'd love to share with you guys an update on this year's MEP Force. We are bringing MEP Force to you. We're calling it MEP Force Roadshow. We are going to be hitting Austin, Boston, the Los Angeles area, and Atlanta. We know times are hard. Not everybody can, make it out to a conference this fall. And so we thought we'd be bringing it right to your backyard. These are just the current cities that we're looking at, but we'd love to hear if you would love to see us in any other locations. Chicago is one that we might be doing in early 2024 as well. So I'll post the link in the chat here, and just fill out this form to make sure you stay up to date with all the details. MEP Force is the conference that we hold. It gives you guys an opportunity to meet other people in the MEP space, hear from other organizations like Evolve who are out here trying to make life easier for folks in the BIM department and the prefab shop. So I will go ahead and share this link. But yeah, if there's no questions, we can call it here for the day. I want to thank you all for joining us, and I hope that you found the information valuable. Please make sure to follow us on social media to keep up with all of our upcoming webinars. As mentioned at the top, you can always find more videos, feature demos, and Revit walkthroughs on the Evolve YouTube channel. And Evolve University provides even more opportunities if that's something you're looking for. Great. With that, I will call it here. Thank you again for attending, and everybody have a great day.